Mr. Daniel Harrington had recently purchased a restaurant called Silver Spoon Bistro. Wanting to see how employees treated customers, he decided to visit the place disguised as a homeless man. Wearing a tattered old jacket and worn-out sneakers, his goal was to observe how people who looked less fortunate were treated. As he stepped inside, he admired the restaurant's elegant decor: chandeliers, polished wooden floors, and neatly arranged tables. He quietly took a seat in the corner and waited to place his order. A few moments later, a tall, blonde woman approached. Her name tag read Jessica, but her expression was anything but welcoming. "How can I help you?" she asked, her tone sharp. "May I see the menu?" Daniel asked politely. Jessica looked him up and down, pursing her lips with a smirk. "This place isn't for you," she scoffed. "We don't serve people like you here." Daniel remained calm. "I can pay for my meal." Jessica let out a loud laugh. "With what? Don't waste my time." Several customers turned their heads toward the conversation, sensing something was off. "May I speak with the manager?" Daniel asked again. Jessica crossed her arms, her patience wearing thin. "I don't have time for this nonsense. Leave now, or I'll call security." At that moment, the restaurant manager, Richard, noticed the commotion and approached the table. His expression was stern. "What's going on here?" he demanded. Jessica quickly jumped in. "This man is causing trouble. He doesn't belong here." Daniel kept his composure. "I only asked for a menu." But Richard didn't even bother listening. "Get out now, or I'll call the police." Without another word, Daniel stood up and walked out. He stepped onto the sidewalk, pulled out his phone and made a call. "Mr. Anderson, we need to talk. I have something to show you." The big reveal. The next morning, Jessica and Richard were at work as usual. Jessica smirked, recounting the previous day. "Did you see how I kicked that beggar out yesterday? People like that don't belong here." Just then, the restaurant doors swung open. Daniel walked in, but this time, he was wearing a sharp suit, looking every bit like the millionaire he was. Beside him stood Mr. Anderson, the restaurant's former owner. Jessica and Richard froze in place, their faces drained of colour as they realised who he really was. "Good morning," Daniel greeted, his voice calm yet commanding. Richard quickly rushed forward, forcing a nervous smile. "Welcome, sir. How can we assist you today?" But Daniel ignored him and turned to Mr. Anderson. "Shall we begin?" Anderson clapped his hands, gathering all the employees. "Listen up, everyone. I'd like to introduce your new boss, Mr. Daniel Harrington." A stunned silence filled the room. Jessica's jaw dropped. Richard's face turned pale. Daniel looked around the room and finally spoke. "Yesterday, I came in here looking different. I wanted to see how I would be treated. What I experienced was completely unacceptable." His eyes locked onto Jessica and Richard. "You judged me based on my appearance and treated me with complete disrespect," Jessica stammered. "Sir, I didn't know who you were." Daniel raised a hand, silencing her. "That's exactly the problem. You didn't know me, so you didn't care." Richard stepped in, trying to salvage the situation. "Mr. Harrington, this was just a misunderstanding." "Enough!" Daniel cut him off. "As a manager, it was your responsibility to ensure that every customer is treated with dignity. Instead, you did the opposite." Mr. Anderson spoke next. "Jessica and Richard, your behaviour does not align with the values of this establishment. Effective immediately, you are both terminated." A murmur spread through the employees. Jessica's eyes welled up with tears, and Richard's face burned with shame. Daniel turned to the remaining staff. "Let this be a lesson to everyone. This restaurant will only thrive if every customer is treated with respect. That is the standard I expect." As Daniel and Mr. Anderson walked out, Jessica and Richard stood there, filled with regret. Justice had been served.